Welcome to Digitally Transformed, the podcast that brings you the latest insights into the ever-evolving world of technology. In this fast-paced digital age, staying ahead of the curve is more crucial than ever. Having the right partner to decipher what is important and useful can make all of the difference. Infused Innovations is a leading authority in transformative technology solutions. From bolstering cybersecurity defenses to equipping employees with the tools they need to excel, our experts are here to guide businesses of all kinds through their digital transformation journey. Listen in as we delve into captivating discussions about groundbreaking trends, emerging technologies, and their profound impact on the way we work and do business. From the practical applications of artificial intelligence to the fascinating world of machine learning, we'll uncover the possibilities that lie within our digital future. You're listening to Digitally Transformed, a podcast powered by Infused Innovations. Here's your host, Justin Starbird.
Welcome back to Digitally Transformed, a podcast powered by Infused Innovations. My name is Justin Starbird, and I get to kick off episode 3 today with Solutions Engineer of Infused Innovations, Alex Clayton. Alex, thanks for coming on today. Thanks for talking to me.
Hey, thanks for having me today.
You know, you are a solutions engineer for a company on the bleeding edge of AI and ML. What does that mean today, for the folks that are listening?
Yeah, so my role at Infuse is kind of, I got a generic job title because I do a little bit of everything in the company. I work with all of our business units and kind of look at new and emerging technology, AI, machine learning, it's one of them, and see how we can implement it both internally at Infuse for our own workflows, as well as how we can use that to apply to our clients. Personally, my big focus at Infused and my job and at our clients is more in the automation realm, speeding up existing processes or rebuilding them, that kind of thing. So I've always had a big focus on that. And obviously AI is the new and exciting area within that realm. So it's been a big focus on that lately. But Infused has also been in there for a while. So
sure. And how long have you been with the company?
Little over a year as of March. So I think I think some math, a year and 3 months or so. So a little bit, not too long.
That's great.
Yeah.
I ask only because, it's interesting that you've been here for just over a year because, of course, Infused Innovation has been, I wouldn't say quiet. Certainly we've been working hard, but in terms of what this podcast has been about and those sorts of things, we've kind of made a pivot because there's been so much going on. Forgive my pun here about this space being transformed, but what has that meant to you, or what have you seen in the industry over the last year, not just from coming on board as a new solutions engineer, but also personally?
Yeah, so obviously AI isn't a new thing. It's been around for a little bit, and you've seen it used in certain cases. Image recognition, certain big thing last year was all the text-to-speech stuff, deep fakes, and voice generation stuff. But the big thing lately has been ChatGPT. It's in everyone's mind. I think it's 14% of American adults have used it by now. That might be higher. Don't quote me on that, but everyone's looking at it because
500,000 downloads just last week after when the app came out, right? I mean, it's been wild.
Yeah, it's just crazy stuff. But it's the first real AI technology I've seen come out that you can use at almost any business. There's, I don't want to say unlimited use cases, but it's not just applicable to one industry. You can use it in finance, technology, accounting firms, engineering firms, even just not specific to their tech stack. You can use it internally for things like documentation generation and just random businesses processes you don't even think of.
Yeah. Offline, you and I were talking a little bit about, taking this incredibly complex technology and breaking it down. You were talking about your grandfather, who's, you come from a line of program engineers and, software engineers, in your family. I come from a lineage that's more manufacturing. So when I talk about marketing and telling, they just think I tell stories all day, right? And then and then you and I are sitting here talking about AI, so augmented I'm sorry, artificial intelligence and then machine learning, and they are, you sit at dinner table or Thanksgiving, like what is like that? What's that like for you?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. My mom and my dad and my stepdad are all also business owners. So I talk to them about it sometimes, and they don't even like think about this technology. But sometimes I'll sit down with them and be like, "What are you doing in your business?" Because there's, small, maybe 5-person businesses. My dad's just a owner of a small trucking company. My stepdad runs a fiber installation company. They're, you know, they're not the usual business you think of applying artificial intelligence to,
Sure.
especially with it being as small as it is. But I help them break down their business processes. My dad's a truck driver. He's not really good with numbers, finances, and that kind of thing. So I helped him look at it and then apply it to his actual, just like the accounting side stuff he does, to speed that up and get him off of using a physical calculator and
Yeah.
adding up all the numbers all day and spending, 12 hours working his actual job, 4 more hours doing all the finance work after and everything. Or like my father-in-law, great example there is he does a lot of or sorry, stepfather does a lot of just like analyzing maps and everything, and he does a
Yep.
really old school way. He prints off everything and looks over it, and just that's just how he's done it for the past 10 years. I sat him down. I didn't really know the process, had him walk me through it, and then um, showed him ChatGPT and helped kind of build some improved processes using that technology to speed up his workflows.
Yeah.
And now he's down
That's
to
wild.
like way less work per week, and he hated doing that drudgery. That he
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
focus on the actual business.
It's funny you say that because Phil and I, CIO here of Infuse, were talking the other day, and before that, Jeff really jumped into it about uh, Chat GPT and AI and ML won't take your job, but the people that are know how to use it will. And what'll happen is actually those companies should get better at uh, being more human centric, actually. So as much as you invest in using the technology, that human element that brings people together should be at the forefront of things, because now you have more time to be person to person to create deeper relationships. So it's fascinating you're talking about two industries that, man, people listening to this probably aren't in those spaces. But the funny thing is in a lot of cases, like you just said, this is the type of technology that actually helped them the most.
Exactly. With like my example of my dad's truck driver on his trucking company. When you think AI, you think self-driving trucks, not the guy sitting at his computer trying to do all the paperwork and books after
Yeah.
with every
After
delivery and
12
everything.
hours of sitting behind, the road, or, asshole drivers in Boston, that are trying to, get around these, 53-foot box trucks, 53-foot trailers and the truck in front of them. I mean, it's a tall task.
Exactly. And it's not taking anyone's job, it's just making his job easier, which means he can spend, actually, for both my examples, they can now spend more money or more time doing what they want to, which is setting up, getting new contracts, negotiating deals, getting more business, which is going to lead to getting, for my stepdad, more workers installing the actual fiber and all that fun stuff. My dad, more truck drivers delivering goods and moving around. Whereas before, all that time was just going to doing the paperwork for his existing business.
Yeah. This is so relevant to the topic we want to actually get on today, which is, you are part of a webinar coming up on June 22nd at 12 p.m. local time, called OpenAI Unleashed. It's the empowering of organizational productivity. You're going to be, you're going to do the demonstration part of the webinar with of course Jeff Wilhelm, CEO of Infused Innovation, and CIO Phil Magnashevsky, doing his part. You know, you're going to be able to take real examples and talk about them. What's this webinar going to be about?
Uh, it's going to be a very more strategic level overview of, what is the technology, kind of how it works from a high level, and then we'll go into some use cases and some industries those use cases can apply to, but we're more focused on the solutions, because if you just think about a solution, I use it for writing documentation. Every industry needs to write documentation. Nobody wants to write documentation, but it's fantastic at that. And just, a great example is at one of my old jobs, my full-time gig was basically writing technical documentation. Nobody else could do it because they didn't have the knowledge I had. Here, same situation. I write a lot of documentation, but that went from almost my entire job to I spent maybe a day and put out 3 months of what I could write at my previous job, just using ChatGPT.
Yep, that's wild. Thinking about that, as you find solutions to use it for your job, because I think that's one of the things that we should really, talk through a little bit about, is that, basically your role here is to figure out, how to implement, the chat GPT or something similar for clients, like where it fits best, and helping them create the programming or solution. What are some of the questions that you get asked most, either on the installation side or, when you're in the thick of things?
Honestly, the biggest question we kind of touched on is, is this going to take jobs away? And no, in my opinion, it's not. It's just going to improve existing jobs. You touched on it earlier as well. It's not the person. You're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to someone else using AI. It's like any other tool. The guy who was using a screwdriver is going to lose to the guy using a power tool if you're building a house.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. And then another big one is if you've tried ChatGPT, came away, you didn't like it. That's a lot of people. If you don't know how to use the tool, there's the phrase is prompt engineering now. There's very specific ways to basically interact with it that might be different than how you do. Even in the realm of IT engineers, we have to think a certain way to get certain results out. I can use it for certain tasks that I do. My wife uses it for studying. I've seen how she does it. I would never think of that. But I know how she's prompt engineering her way to that solution, but I didn't think of that use case. So the big thing is just how to actually use it to get the results you want. And that's kind of where we can help come in, train on how to use the technology and then apply that to different use cases within your business.
Can I just say I get better responses when I say please and thank you?
Good call. I always make sure to say that too, just in case. You never know.
That's it. I mean, I've been saying that with Alexa, or my Google Assistant or Siri or whatever, since it came out, because I was like, one day, it'll be, it might get upset with me. But no, in all seriousness, how you write the answer or how you write the question, or, look at what you're attempting to solve. Sometimes, I find that, and you correct me if you find other things. I find I ask it a more simple question first, relative to the topic, and then ask to go deeper, relative to the topic, or to keep going with it. I don't have a good example. You prompted me by talking about this, right? I mean, so now I'm thinking of an example, but as you get into it, it's really a couple of iterations before you find the answer that you're looking for, or solution that's fitting what you need. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's one way of interacting with it. So you can kind of build iteratively off your pre-existing, I guess, question, and then have it revise and revise and revise. And that's in the ChatGPT interface that we're used to using.
Yeah.
And then it has a context, not to get too technical, but there's like a context limitation. It goes back and it uses the previous data as a reference and builds off of. So like for my documentation, I just have a chat open with all the other ones I've had it generate. So it tries to keep the same template and everything. Whereas after the first simple question I asked it honestly wasn't that great, but it just built on and built on and built on. Oh, it's awesome. To take that from how I use it now to a full solution, if you interact out directly with the API side of it, you could actually preload a more complicated prompt. It's a good way to say it as the system message.
Yep.
And that would get you almost the exact style you want every single time instead of having to take that time to build iteratively. But you can take that, iterative step to get to the point where you know what you need to build that actual system prompt.
Sure.
I guess a more personal use case scenario is I've been trying to use it to write some sci-fi books as kind of like take a big task and then break it down in smaller tasks and see how well I can get the technology to do that. Ironically, with the ChatGPT, like direct, chat.openai.com interface, the simpler descriptions of how I wanted the chapter to go gave me way better answers.
Really?
But then I took that over to the API side and then had a more complicated system prompt and got insanely better results than using the regular chat interface.
Yeah.
So after it took me a day or so of messing with it to get it where I wanted the chat interface, which I could then take to the API, and now I can generate an entire chapter with one prompt. And I sent to some of my friends who were really into sci-fi, and they said, "Sounds awesome."
Yeah. That's wild, right? I mean, so thinking about on the business side of things, I mean, and taking the what you just explained, how does a company know that they're ready for you to come in and evaluate, what they're doing, or have Phil come in, do an iterative session, or some sort of meeting? When does a company know, or what kind of questions should they be asking themselves?
Honestly, the question is, are we ready to jump in? There's so many different use cases this can apply to. So my personal suggestion is just give it a shot. You can just do a couple of our workshops. We'll take a look with you, do some demos, just dive into the process and see how well it works. Like I kind of alluded to earlier, I use the technology a certain way. Our clients, when we implement it, can use it differently. My wife uses it to study in ways I can't even imagine. We don't know your process. So the best thing to do is just combine the technology with the process, see how well it works, do a quick MVP with it. And then if it works, you can iterate on that and then build a full solution around it.
Sure. I think there's two things that we've talked about, and I don't want that to go unnoticed, but one example you gave with your dad was about accounting, and very thinking about numbers. And so people think about data sets, and they think data sets, and they think huge Excel sheets or multiple Excel sheets with huge amounts of information in them. But you also said a second one, which is relative to maps. And I guess you could break that down into longitude, latitude, and get numbers too. But a third one that you mentioned was the documentation piece. And now you have, and I'm just, kind of thinking through this live on this recorded podcast, but you're talking about data, you're talking about images, and you're talking about documentation. And those are three different ways that you talk about as data input. So, for folks that are evaluating this as a potential opportunity, and they're like, well, we don't have, drilling numbers or accounting figures or purchase receipts that go back. I'm just trying to think of ideas for huge numbers or some other information relative to that. You mentioned two other things: huge libraries of images relative to maps, etc., and then another one that is relative to very specific types of documentation, which is words. When you are iterating with somebody or going through one of those workshops, does it matter which one they're bringing to you?
Not in particularly. A great one or a great example on this was my stepdad was the image one. So ChatGPT, right now, the available stuff doesn't do image analytics. There is some private preview stuff around that. But I didn't actually do anything with the maps themselves. I sat down with them, had them explain the process, and then worked with ChatGPT to figure out basically, like, he had his way of doing things, but there's a certain end results he wanted. I don't install fiber. I don't run his company. I don't really know that industry that well. But we sat down and then did some questioning back and forth with ChatGPT to figure out a better way to do the actual process. Implemented some CAD software and then made it so we didn't have to print out every single piece of paper and then mark it and then rescan it in and then send it back.
Yeah.
It's been working for him for 9 years, but it takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even, and then we had it so it pulls basically, sorry, I got to be kind of vague, but pulls some of the data in he gets from his various suppliers. He just manually puts it into the solution we help build and then does the few manual steps left, but we eliminated a lot of the drudgery, as I call it. So once again, he still has to do some of the work, but a lot of it's been streamlined. And we also use, even outside of building the solution, we used the technology to help figure out a better process for him to follow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. And then talk about the element about the documentation stuff. I mean, you mentioned, working with the API to really make that sing well. Um, is there a difference between, say, that and the data sets?
Yeah, so a kind of related, a project that us Infused built with the University of Rhode Island was, if you ever applied for university, you go on their website, they have 1,000 different course curriculums. They all have different names. One university calls it this, one university calls it that. You have a vague idea of what you want, so you talk to the guidance counselor. What we built at the University of Rhode Island, it's kind of a proof of concept. It's a chatbot that goes out. The chatbot itself runs on ChatGPT technology, but the back end of it does some AI cognitive search stuff that touches on all of their public facing documentation that's in a big data set, queries it for what the student looks for, like, hey, I want to do computer engineering degree. I'm interested in this kind of stuff. What courses should I take to get this degree? It goes out, finds all that documentation, and then surfaces it for the student, gives it kind of an overview, and actually links back to all the official documents from the university so the student can look at that.
Yeah, that's so cool, though, right? I mean, seeing it in action like that, you must be like, oh, pat myself on the back.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff. Like, what would you have to do before? Either set up a meeting with a guidance counselor and talk through it for a few hours, kind of try and pinpoint what you want, get your own thoughts in the words, have them translate it out, and then also go search all that stuff manually. Whereas now you can just go type out what you want and it surfaces all of it for you. Even if you don't, you can then take that information to a guidance counselor, whoever, and build on from there. Even if that's not exactly perfect, it gives you a starting point and just cuts the time in half.
I think it's just so cool. So you are going to take a tall task. So on June 22nd at 12 p.m. local time, as I mentioned, you are one of the co-hosts of the OpenAI Unleashed, Empowering Organizational Productivity. But you have a distinctive task on that for that event. You are going to do a live demonstration. What have you decided what the demo is going to be about yet?
Yeah, we're going to be touching on a few things. For the most part, it is going to be me sharing my screen while I talk to ChatGPT and show you kind of some prompt engineering, how to use it, applying it to different use cases at more of a high level basic view. And I'll also be showing off that tool we built for URI as well as part of the demonstration, so you can see what it's like as what you can do with the ChatGPT direct interface and how you can go from that to a fully built solution around the software that's designed for you rather than just kind of like a generalist platform.
Sure. That's I mean, listen, we all know what can happen with live demos on webinars. So I mean, hats off to you for taking that part on.
Thanks. It'll be interesting. We're also going to have a Q&A section. So if you have any questions and want to see anything, feel free to jump in and ask questions as well. Try to show you what we can.
Great. Well, I really appreciate you jumping on with me today, Alex. This has been, great insight into, what your role is here at Infused Innovation, but also, where the technology is currently, where it's going, And I love the personal connection to some of the stuff. I feel like, not to be too hokey here, but that really humanizes stuff, and opens up the world, opens up our audience, meaning, more people can make a case for, what it is that you're doing.
I think so. I mean, yeah, it's great to just see examples sometimes. You Google OpenAI and it's just overwhelming the amount of information you get. So sometimes you just need to sit down and have someone show you.
Yep. Awesome. Well, Alex, thanks for joining me today, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
On behalf of Alex Clayton, Solutions Engineer for Infused Innovations, my name is Justin Starbird, and you've been listening to the latest episode of Digitally Transformed, powered by Infused Innovations.
Thank you for listening to Digitally Transformed, a podcast powered by Infused Innovations. For more information and to learn more about this topic or explore other resources, go to our website, infusedinnovations.com. On behalf of our guests and host Justin Starbird,